Math 3, Unit 8, Section 1. Today we're talking about how to obtain a sample. So starting with reading there. Have you ever wondered how do news broadcasters ever come up with information like the approval ratings for the President of the United States? Better yet, how do they figure out the average number of text messages a person sends or receives in a month based upon their age? When the population is too large, a researcher would like to get a sample that is suitable representation of the population. So starting here, a sample, okay, is a part of the entire population. So a sample is just a piece of it, not the whole part. The class you're sitting in right now is a sample of your high school. More than likely, however, the classroom you sit in right now probably is not a good representation of your high school. When you have a sample that favors a particular part of a population, then that sample is biased. So biased is when a sample favors a particular part of the population. So the goal is to gather a fair sample that represents the population. So again, you're always looking to find the fair sample, okay? So what type of study do you use? Before we go out and collect data, we must first focus on what we want to collect. There are various types of studies when we collect data. Some are simpler to conduct than others. However, the main focus of any method is to reduce the effect of any bias with the study. In Math 3, there are 3 types of studies we will be looking at. Okay, so the 3 types of studies are right there. So we have observation. Guess what you do in observation?
You observe.
You guys are amazing. Okay, then there is experimental, and it's important in experimental that you, for most experimentals, you'll have a control versus a non-controlled. What's the difference, do you think?
A control is something you can control. You control one.
Non-control is when you just
Let's see what happened. Okay, and then there's also a survey or census. Okay, so we're going to go through and just read these different scenarios, and then you're going to decide which method do you think would be the best. So it says, in addition to identifying the type of study, explain why the study method would be used in the situation. Okay, so a few geologists from a university located in California would like to determine the time gaps between major droughts that the West Coast has experienced. So, observation. Okay, so this one is observation. And so, one thing that I wanted you to note on this observation, so obviously you would just wait and see what happens, right? But it often, I'm going to write this, collection of data that is already present is easier than waiting years for an outcome. So instead of like starting now, and this is supposed to be 2 words, easier than, instead of starting now and just kind of trying to see what happens with droughts, it's best to go in the past for a situation like that and look to see what has happened. Okay, B. The senior class at a local high school is deciding upon which of the 3 possible speeches is going to be delivered at the graduation ceremony. Very good. Survey would be your best bet. And so you would take a survey of the entire senior class to decide which speech to use. Bless you.
Thank you.
What?
She's
Oh, I thought she said gas.
Okay, C, are we ready? A major lawn care company is attempting to develop a new fertilizer that promotes a certain type of lawn to grow healthy and at an accelerated rate.
Experimental.
Very good. So we would use experimental. And it's important in this experimental, what would we also need to do? You would also need to use a control group. So what would the control group include? Grass, but it would include no fertilizer, right? So you would see what happens with one where you put the fertilizer on it, and then what would happen to the one if you didn't use the fertilizer. Okay. Questions so far? Okay, so moving on to D here. Okay, an international bike company has developed a new way to weave carbon fiber to make their bike frame stronger and lighter. The bike company already has the strongest and lightest bike frame on the market. So what method do you think would be best on this one?
A servo?
It actually, you would use experimental. On this one though, there is no control group needed. Okay, E. The Gallup poll is interested in the percent of people that are going to vote in the next presidential election. Very good. And again, with this survey, you would only take a part of the population. Okay, any questions so far? Okay. Okay, so see what you think you know. Determine if the following examples are a good way to obtain a fair sample. Include what you think is wrong with the examples. All the students are trying to obtain a sample of their high school. In addition, name the type of sampling method. Okay, so we're going to talk about what each of these things are. Okay, so stratified, a stratified sample. Does anybody have any idea what this is?
Stratified?
Mm-hmm.
Not.
Okay, so this is what it is. When you're taking a stratified sample, you first put people in groups. So for instance, let's say we're at the high school. We would put everybody in like freshman, sophomore, junior, senior groups. That would be the start of a stratified sample because we'd put everybody in groups. Okay, once you put people in groups, then you take a random sample from each group. So I'm just going to put random sample from each group. Okay, so then we have systematic. So when I hear systematic, I think of a system, right? Yeah, okay. And so systematic is when you have a numbered list. And then you take a random start. So let's say we have a list of 1,000. Well, somehow you get a random number off that list as a start. So let's say you choose 78, I don't know. So you have a random start, And then you're like, okay, I'm starting at number 78, and then I'm going to take every fifth person. Okay? And so you're starting at 78, and then you're counting 5 and going each fifth person. So we're going to go random start, and then nth person. Does that make sense? So this says a numbered list, so you have like a numbered list of 1 to 1,000. You'll do a random starting point. So like I said, number 78, and then you'll take the nth person. So from 78, we're gonna then take every fifth person and keep going through the list until we get back to 78. Okay? All right, a simple random sample is that you just have a list, and then you just take a random person or random picking from that list. Self-selected. That one kind of explains itself, and that is just a person chooses. So let's say that you want to take a survey and you just like went out to lunch, and you normally self-selected is like you just go out there and like choose people. Okay, or you could have a list and you just pick people however you want to. And then convenience. Convenience is just whoever is available. So I'm just going to write available. And you're just basically trying to get your quickest, fastest sample. So if you were doing a survey and you were like in your English class or whatever, then you're like, if you were doing a convenience sample, it would just be like, okay, I'm just going to give everybody in my English class the survey because you just want to get it done really quick, and that's it. But your like English class wouldn't necessarily be a great place to get a sample, and why is that?
Because it's biased.
Right, it is biased. It's only part of the population. It's only like if you're in 11th grade English, it's only 11th graders. But if you're trying to figure out like all of high school, then that's not a very good sample. But if you're just talking about 11th graders, then maybe that one is okay. All right, so now we're going to kind of go through these. And so we want to talk about what would be the type of sample that this person is doing. Okay, so John was walking through the campus and asked people to volunteer themselves to be part of his research. He did his best to make sure the number of students he selected from the freshman class was equal to all the other classes. So what would we call this? Yeah, it kind of seems like convenience, but it's actually self-selected because he's going and he's still choosing these people. Does that make sense? So this one is self-selected.
Is that going to be like our homework tonight? Or what we're going to have to do?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Frito-Lay makes a product called Doritos, which is produced in a factory. The quality inspector for the factory would like to collect a few of the bags produced in the factory to see if the weight of the bag meets the specific amount acceptable by Frito-Lay. The inspector took the next 50 bags on the conveyor belt to inspect. What would you think that one would be?
System.
No.
Simple random.
Well, was it random, or did he just take the first 50 that came off the belt?
So it's convenience.
That one is convenience. Okay. Raul obtained an alphabetical list of everyone at his school. He then numbered them from 1 to A and blank for Z. So 1 for A, meaning the first person on the list is A, up to however many numbers there are until you get to Z. Okay, so he then got a list of random digits and used the list to obtain his sample.
I wonder what this one is. Simple random sample.
Very good, you got it. Simple random sample is correct.
Good job, Jordan.
Thanks. No, real hard.
Okay. All right, so Maureen divided her school up into 4 groups: freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and seniors. She listed everyone in each class and numbered them. After that, she randomly selected students from each class using some computer software. The selected students then represented the school. Very good. This one is stratified random sample. Okay, so remember, stratified is where they group them first, and then you take random samples from each of those groups. Okay. A math teacher wanted to select a random sample of students based upon 2 periods of Math 3 classes. The instructor numbered each student starting with 1 and ending with 70. The teacher then decided to take every 10th person wherever she started. The teacher used a calculator to randomly select the value 45. At that point, the teacher counted down the list to the 10th person. The 10th person going, that 10th person go, that doesn't even make sense, does it? Am I reading it wrong? Okay. Anyways, so then every 10th person from that list. Make sense? Okay, starting at 45. So what is this one? Very good. Okay, so far so good? All right, moving on. Next page. Okay, the main emphasis in obtaining a sample is involving the process of randomness. There are several ways, so randomness is important. There are several ways you can randomly select items using a fair coin, a die, software,
have to die.
random digit table. A die is singular. Oh my goodness. Always try to remove yourself from the decision of who or what gets selected for your sample. Okay, before you can obtain any sample, you must describe in detail how you're going to compile your sample. Within the details, you must describe all possible scenarios, including repeats and numbers not used in your sampling methods. Example, suppose you use a 6-sided die to determine which of the 4 students gets a free cookie. You roll a 5. What do you do?
Keep the cookie for yourself.
Wait, what?
So like in that case, okay, if you would have to number everybody, right? And then once you roll the die, then the number 5 gets a cookie or something like that, right? Okay. Below are some hypothetical situations. Describe in detail how you would obtain a random sample. Use either all of the sampling methods for each of the situations. That doesn't make sense either. Okay, so we are going to choose one of these samples, and then we also want to describe what we would do. Does that make sense? So we want to describe the method, and then we want to describe how do we actually use the method. Okay. Here's our first one. You would like to survey the students at your high school and find out what % of the students have an iPhone. Okay, there are multiple ways of doing this. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and choose the method. Okay, we are going to use simple random sampling. Now I want you to tell me how to do this.
So just do a list of
Yeah, so it's the first thing. If we're going to take a simple random sample right now, what are we going to do first?
find random people.
Go back to simple random sample on the previous page, and what does it say that we do for a simple random sample?
List random pick.
Okay, so the first thing we would have to do is number each of the students at the high school. So that's like where we get like an alphabetical list and we just go through and number them, okay? And then and then if you're doing a random, from there, we would use some kind of random number generator to select the students, okay? So I'm just gonna use a random number generator. Okay. B. A grocery store would like to find out the average amount of time a customer spends in line before she pays for the products purchased. I think the only way to really do this one is just a convenience sampling. You just have to stand there and take a sample. So we're going to write convenience sampling. Okay, so how could we do a convenient sample? I kind of already started to say it, but.
Just wait.
So we're just going to take a sample of the next set of customers waiting in line, and then you would need to time the amount of time, I don't know if that makes sense or not, time the amount of time it takes from getting in the line until checking out. Okay, are we good? Yeah? Okay. C. Okay, a pharmaceutical company would like to know the effects of a new drug that promotes weight loss on some lab rats. Their interest is the effect of the drug on different weights of the lab rats. Okay. Now, there's a few things to pay attention in here. So it wants to know the effects of the new drug that promotes weight loss on some lab rats. So they're wanting to look at a weight, right?
Lab rats.
Is that what I said?
Yeah.
Lab rats. Okay, and their interest is in the effect of the drug on the different weights of the lab. And I'm not redoing the video. That's okay. It'll be there. Okay, so because they're wanting to know the effects of the drug on different weights, there's a certain method you would probably want to use.
Stratified?
Mm-hmm. Oh. Stratified is correct. And specifically, we want to do stratified by weight. So to start with, we would need to do what? Good. So break the lab rats in like weight groups. I'm putting in weight groups. Okay.
Because they don't gonna just break the lab rats.
Yeah, we're not going to break them. Yeah. And then what would we do from there?
Test.
Yeah, so then you would take from each group, you would take a random sample from each group.
I want to say rab labs.
You can. It's the new thing.
Wait, was it Rablab?
Rablabs.
And I didn't even catch it. That's funny.
I wrote it in my notes.
Okay. At least we're having
I think
fun.
I'm
It's gonna be my senior.
At my expense.
Rablab, this is also.
At Mistletoe.
Okay. GoPro makes a small digital video camera that is used quite a bit around the world. You're a quality control inspector for the company. You're wondering about the reliability of the batteries made for the cameras.
Oh yeah, Cobra.
Alpha's new language. Okay. Okay, so anybody have any idea of the best method here? I would actually say systematic sampling. So with systematic sampling, the first thing you would have to do is we are going to do a numbered list of registered GoPro cameras. So you have to, because we have to be able to find these people, right? And so that's why they would need to be registered, because that's the only way we can get a list is from the people that actually register the products. Okay, so we're going to make a numbered list of registered GoPro cameras. And then we would need to randomly select a number from the list, and then whom remembers what we do next.
Take the in-person
Very good.
for the camera.
Good. Take the nth person from the list. And then we go through and keep taking that nth person, right? Okay, E. You are at a town hall meeting. The meeting has approximately 1,300 people attending regarding water usage during the summer months. You are responsible for investigating the number of minutes used in a day to water their lawn and plants around their home. You would like to quickly gather a sample of residents and ask them questions after the meeting is done.
Convenience.
Yeah, it's like convenience, and specifically we're gonna just go self-selected. And so the best way for this sample is just to ask if anyone at the meeting is willing to volunteer for a survey. And I changed that a little bit, but same idea. Ask if anyone at the meeting is willing to volunteer for the survey. Because you can't like make people do things where convenience, you're just kind of taking things. When you're dealing with people, you can't just make people do something, so you actually have to ask them, are they willing to do this? Okay, any questions?
You could make them, but it'd be illegal.
True.
This is for grading.